What is the rule of law, and why do we not call it the rule by law? Helping me unpack this term is Dr. Betsy Apple, Advocacy Director and Head of the Rule of Law Cluster at the Open Society Foundation. Betsy, when we look up the word rule of law, we find a very dense definition. In simple terms, what is the rule of law?
The rule of law is a set of principles that help us to understand how government needs to be accountable, how laws need to be fair, predictable, transparent, and stable, and how, as citizens and as people in the world, we need to be treated equally under the law. Often when we talk about the rule of law, we often talk about it having two components. One component is the procedural component, the things that we think about in terms of fairness. What's a fair procedure? What's due process? And the other piece of the rule of law is what we call the substantive piece of the rule of law. That's the part where the rule of law has content. It's not just that we have laws, but it's that we have fair laws. It's not just that laws are written down so that everybody can see them, which would be a part of the procedural aspect of rule of law, but it's that those written down laws apply equally to everyone, rich and poor, male and female, no matter who. So the rule of law really does embody this notion of justice and fairness. It's not just what looks to be just and fair, but what is actually just and fair and is experienced as such by people.
Why do we not call it the rule by law? What is the subtle difference in that term?
In a rule by law situation, you have laws, but those laws don't have the substantive content that includes justice, fairness, due process, accountability, equality of treatment, legality. So the difference between rule of law and rule by law is really profound because it's not just about the existence of laws, it's what kinds of laws, the ways that the laws are passed, the ways that the laws are implemented. So it's the entire environment of fairness and justice.
The four universal principles of the rule of law are accountability, just laws, an open government, and accessible justice.
Even in nations where we say there's a strong rule of law, there are almost always deviations. So that's what kind of can make this quite complicated. Even if you say that the rule of law exists in a country, you will find inevitably that there are some examples where the rule of law slips. And that's why it's really important for all of us to be vigilant and to make sure that we're pushing constantly for total adherence to this idea of justice and fairness and accountability across the board.
Reduced adherence to the rule of law anywhere, even in mature democracies, threatens development and justice everywhere.
Why is it important for everyone to be involved, and how do we get involved in supporting the rule of law?
We are all subject to laws, and we are all affected by whether or not laws are fair, clear, transparent, and whether or not the government applies those laws equally to all the people in its jurisdiction, and whether or not the government applies those laws to itself as well. So it really doesn't matter what your occupation or your station in life is. You cannot live in the world and not be subject to laws. So that is why the rule of law is so critical to all of us. What do we do? How do we become involved in becoming advocates for the rule of law? Well, we have to be civically engaged. We have to participate in the civic life of the places where we're living. We have to know when laws are being unfairly applied. We have to read the newspaper. We have to object. We have to protest. We have to organize with others. We have to at least educate ourselves as to whether or not what we're living in, the regime that we're living under, is a regime that applies laws fairly and clearly and holds people accountable on an equitable basis or not? Because if not, then we have to think about what our role is in pushing for that accountability, justice, fairness, and transparency.
What transpires for me is that the rule of law concerns all of us. Each and every one of us has to be involved in making sure that the rule of law promotes justice and serves everyone equally. Thank you for watching.